Hello and welcome to this lecture on responsive web design. Last time we looked at creating wireframes, basic page designs, how to use CSS float and flex to begin to build parts of those designs. We said the float was best for placing two items next to each other on the page, like a paragraph and an image perhaps. And flex was best for aligning multiple items in a row or a column, like product galleries, images, navigation links, that sort of thing. But today we'll look at the topic, as we say, responsive web design, RWD, excuse me, frog in the throat, and how to make the design look good in a range of different screen size and devices, which is a bit of a challenge. So first of all, let's consider the benefits of a flexible, responsive, fluid layout that adapts to the screen size available. An example in practice. Here we go. Here we've gone for a fixed design, where the designer has chosen to design for a fixed width. In this case, I've chosen 1000 pixels. The advantages are, of course, that it's easy to design that way because you know, like print media, how much space you've got to play with, where things will be related to each other, etc. The disadvantages become when the screen size is bigger than what you designed for. In this case, beyond 1200 pixels, 1000 pixels, get this blank space appear, which doesn't look that great. And then if I choose to inspect elements in Chrome, I can toggle this thing on here. See in the practicals later. Allows you to sort of test how the screen will look at different widths. So at 1000, roughly doesn't look too bad. Space appears to the right, it gets bigger than that, not so good. Go smaller. Eventually you get a scroll bar up here at the bottom and parts of the design end up being cut off and you wouldn't see them to the right hand side, which obviously isn't that good, not fantastic at all. A better approach is to use a responsive kind of tag, basically where we set the widths rather than fixed units in alternative units like percentages that are sort of resized with the page screen size available to it. Here we can see that basically it's set in percentage units, the width. So basically it resizes out to fill the full screen available. Smaller, perhaps the lines get higher. And they get longer as the screen goes bigger. Problem with that is if you kept going to bigger and bigger sizes, even with the percentage-based design, it's still, the line becomes very long eventually and it becomes hard to read. Alternatively, when you get smaller, it's going to be bunched up, things start to pop out the continuous at the navigation bar, etc. And design begins to break down at small size as well. So you need to use something called media queries, as we'll see, in combination with a percentage-based design or some kind of adaptive unit-based design to achieve a proper responsive layout that we want to achieve. Let's pop back to the slides. Okay, so our goal is to help the content look good on all devices, all screen sizes as far as we can. Basic principle is we deliver the same HTML to each device, then apply different CSS using these media query things to make it adapt the layout, etc., to the size of screen available, maintaining usability and good looking design as far as we can. It's an example of how NASA do it. The home page. Look at the top left. You can see they use a one-column design for mobile screens. Looks kind of reasonable. Across the top right, That's when the screen size available is going to be bigger, maybe tablet size screens. And they've adopted a sort of a 2-column design in part there to take advantage of the more space now available to work with. The bottom is more like a 3-column design for, say, laptop or desktop size screens. And in part there's 3 columns in play again to take advantage of the biggest size amount of space. It's now available to them. That's a typical approach, 1, 2, 3 columns. But you can do other things as well, of course, as appropriate for your particular design, achieve your goals. As I said, media queries are key to this. And they literally do what they say in the tin, they query the browser. So you can query the browser and say, for example, how wide is the screen available to me at this current time? And depending on the answer to that, you apply different CSS rule sets to change the layout, 1, 2, 3 columns, or whatever you want to do to make it look good in practice. Now, the general format of one of these media queries is in the top of the slide there. As you can see, we use what's called @media, which is the media directive. So we can use media queries, media type, various types. Screen is most common to query, sizes, etc. There's also things like print available to query as well. And a particular feature can be things like the width of the screen, as we've said, but also things like the orientation, landscape or portrait, and if you don't like a tablet device, whatever, mobile device, and adapt the screen display properly depending on the answers there. The second one, as we said, the most common one, probably is to detect the width of the screen. It's the same, basically it's the minimum width, at least 1200 pixels. If it is, adapt the screen and change the body, the background color to show that we've entered that bigger screen space. But that's not necessarily just what you do in practice, of course. You change the layout in some kind of way or other kind of things you'd monkey about with. But here we've chosen some simple CSS for explanation on this slide. Okay, let's take a look at this in practice. So I've created this basic web page. It has common grouped areas like header, navigation, main, footer, and some basic CSS to apply some base styles to that design. Now, this setting of base styles is a useful and usual thing nowadays, and if you've got media queries in play later, because basically your base styles are things you want to apply to all screen size, regardless of how big or small it is. They're also useful for a mobile approach. A common approach nowadays is something called mobile first, because most people access the web page contents more often than not by mobile device. So basically in this base styles, you can put the base styles you want there for the mobile device display in there as well, as we'll see later on. So in a browser, this currently looks like this. Some yucky colors, yellows, cyan, red, but a basic page with some simple styling. Also, you can do much better on your style, I'm sure. Page is a basic example. I'm going to add, after this base styles, the first media query. What this will do is it'll detect the screen, and I'll say, is the width of the screen at least 600 pixels? In other words, are we starting to get a bit beyond that sort of mobile small screen size we want as a default styling for? If it is, we add new styles in here, because I'm going to change the layout to 2 columns, maybe. See later. For now, we're going to change the background color of the body to show we've entered that sort of larger screen size and the media query is working. And also, you might want to do something like this because you've got more space. Change the size of the text up a bit. For example, from 48 pixels in the heading 1 to 72. What you do is your design choice, with some examples of what you can achieve. Let's try this. Let's refresh that. So below 600 pixels, we stay with the base styles being used in the CSS. Go above 600, And there we are beginning to see the adapting taking place. So demonstration, we change the background color. I made the heading 1 bigger, as we said we would. And what you would do is you'd use a tool like this and inspect in Google Chrome to resize the page smaller and larger progressively and work out, well, where are the things called the breakpoints. In other words, where does the design begin to sort of break down a bit? The line gets too big or too small, etc. And then create a media query for that particular width, 600,000 pixels, whatever, and adapt the design appropriately with some CSS rules to make it look better. Let's say we found another media query that wanted to be at 1,000 pixels. And just leave H1 the same. Don't need to repeat that one because it'll pick it up from before. Let's change the background color to something different to show again, just to demonstrate the fact we've entered a larger screen size. In reality, this can be 3 columns or whatever you want. Design change. Press only right in the body style. Not the H1 because we've set the H1 here as default. When we get a 600 pixels, it resets it to bigger. And basically, remember, we're going through the media queries in turn. So those styles would have been applied. Body's then overwritten, you get bigger. H1 stays the same because we just leave it as it was for 600 pixels. Refresh the page and resize the page. There we go, just demonstration purposes. Change the color, show the detection of the larger screen size, and responsive change to the CSS style sheet rules. One little thing you can do is click on the 3 dots and inspect like this. And say show media queries. And adds the various things at the top of the page. So you can click on these and see kind of what media query would apply at 600 pixels or 1,000 pixels. You can also change between common device types. It's how it would look on a mobile small screen, like that. How it would look on a tablet screen, and so on. It's a very useful thing, this inspecting, do lots with it. So as we said, common these days to adopt a mobile first responsive layout. As we saw, we start with a base set of styles, above any media queries, and include the styles we want for a mobile design, as you'll see in a later workshop. And we work out what's called the breakpoints, and larger or perhaps even larger screen sizes, where the design begins to break down and can do a changing or adapting to the bigger space available by adding a CSS media query, as you can see an example there on the page. I'm going to take a break there, come back and look at how we can begin to code up the responsive layout changes. For example, moving from 1, 2, 3 columns, etc. as you wish on the page. See you soon.